October 12th, 2018. You may have just gotten Black Ops 4, you may or may not have been super excited for the launch of the game, and you're jumping in trying to rank up your MP, Blackout, or Zombies ranks, experiencing the game for the first time potentially. If you played the beta, or potentially even were at any of the events where you could play the game a little early, you probably know the menus were way different compared to what they were in previous years. This one more so resembling a Destiny style or PC style of menu, and not your traditional standard run-of-the-mill Call of Duty menu. So across your MP, Blackout, or Zombies, you have a couple of different tabs in your menu: barracks, personalization, challenges, identity, options, and each displaying their own subsequent information. The barracks tab was a quick glance at the medals in MP, which you can actually break down, your progress and unlocks, which shows you the different levels you can unlock everything, how close you are to the next level in prestige. You end up having your quick glance stats with wins, EKIA score, healing per game, damage per game, and so on and so forth. But leaderboards were something that were omitted at first, and then they were added in for all your game modes, but just simply your friends list. Fast forward about a week to 2 weeks after the launch of the game, we end up seeing that the mention of combat records fully was going to be introduced at some time. Fast forward not a couple of weeks, but a couple of months, and this is where the discussion and debate on where that ever went came up a lot more. As of recently, David Vonderhaar mentioned that an answer would be coming soon. Then we end up seeing today an official answer for where combat records, and a detailed combat record at that, has been, and now why it's so different. Today we're gonna break down all that. There was a little bit added into Black Ops 4 as well in terms of some technical changes, so we'll talk about that at the tail end of the video. But let's talk about combat records, because 5 months and 23 days later, we finally have combat records for Black Ops 4, but not in the way that you probably anticipated. The combat record details are first initially detailed by a Reddit post from the official Treyarch account that was titled April 4th Update, New Mobile Combat Record, Bare Bones Healing Update, Improvements and Fixes in Alcatraz, and Ancient Evil. Now the lead off with this obviously is the biggest part of this, that being the mobile combat record, and that's exactly what it is, a mobile combat record. This is something that is now directing all players to the COD Companion app for Android and iOS devices. Now, before we break down into any discussion or anything that is outside of just the simple cold hard facts, everything that is granted here with this is in the new application. You end up seeing your combat record, your friend comparison, and then as well the black market in your player tab for this. So for this, you should be able to see things for individual weapons and weapon categories, such as EKIA, your K to D with it, your kills, your headshots, your deaths while using, your accuracy, your shots landed, your shots fired, your killed by, your damage done with, and then for things like your specialist weapons, again, your EKIA, your kills, your times used, your damage, your killed by, your supported by, then all that kind of stuff with your equipment and special issue as well. And then those same stats continue down to score streaks and also things with maps by mode for your wins, losses, win and loss ratio, and then specific stats by each game mode. Your attachments also have some things in-game that will be supported as the same as the weapon stats, so you're gonna have a full breakdown of absolutely everything here with this. Unfortunately, I can't really put up, at least on my end, much of the combat record because my app, for whatever reason, hasn't updated just yet. Even tried reinstalling. Yours might be in the same scenario, but I'd expect within the next 24 hours or so an update to go out for all that, so that all players who have access to the COD Companion app can end up getting this. Now, we talk about simply just the stats breakdown. It's pretty cool to see this kind of stuff added in finally, and it might be exactly what some players that love stats want to see. Maybe not necessarily in the right place, and we'll talk about that in a second, but Treyarch ended up going a little further in depth, talking about the design intent here with this, saying that when they launched Black Ops 4, the combat records for this, they were really interested in going deep into the player stats and expanding some of the features that we'd see normally, and some of those including every time you load up a map, you'll end up seeing your average kill-death ratio, your average amount of kills, and your also win-loss ratio on that specific map. They look to break things up in more easy-to-digest manners than that of what would just be a standard traditional combat record, which we'll talk about in just a second as to why I'm a little confused by that. But they also mention things like the specialist performance stats. You end up seeing how many kills or how many assists or whatever it is in your specialist menus whenever you can end up taking a look and personalizing those. And so everything was sort of segmented, but even with the inclusion of a little bit more information on the barracks tabs for each individual mode, I don't necessarily understand this. Like, this has to be a business decision, right? Like, personally, I'm not too invested in combat records at all. I never really have been since Black Ops, which in my mind is still the undisputed best combat record ever, but removing myself from any personal ties, I just don't get the reasoning to take what could easily be implemented in-game and then move it to the companion app. I haven't used it in a while, but is it a way to like maybe monetize through ads? Are there even ads in the companion app? I don't know. I'm just legitimately confused as to why you remove that from a player's in-game options, when in-game dev, the end goal is literally to keep the players in your game as long as possible. So Why remove players from that to check stats willingly? Why not just put them in game? There was at some point the mention that players are on their phones during their pre-game lobbies or like in between games, but if I'm gonna check my stats, I'd like to just hit start and find it right there in game. I don't have to look away. I don't have to worry about coming back in time for my game or anything like that. I don't want to go out to a secondary application. I just want to check it in game. So I don't really get that part, but the further explanation confuses me even more. Treyarch mentions they're sorry for committing to combat records back in October, and their focus was on the stats you see currently in game, such as the map-specific stats that pop up while loading in. There's no plans to also add what we have now in the companion app into the actual game. But what really confuses me is how they confess, or I guess publicly state, who knows if it's the actual real reason or not, because it's a simple counter-argument. They say that many players would not engage with the current combat record stats because of the complexity of the menus, and they don't want to bring that complexity to Black Ops 4 even further, so instead plan on having combat records in the app. If they're referring to Black Ops 4's menus being complex, well, why did the format change in the first place? I get the initial attempt to bridge the gap between PC and consoles at first, but it's a nice thought, and I think that, honestly, it's just that, a thought. It wasn't really too practical. I still don't necessarily like the menu UI design for Black Ops 4. I've dealt with it and I've gotten along with it, but I still think previous menus that we've had are much better, for console especially, but like, it's just a start menu press away. I don't think that's too complex to enter into your combat record and then break it down further. I don't think that it was necessarily that people weren't exactly interacting with it. It was just known that there really wasn't much to show off, so many players wouldn't really check to begin with. But if they're referring to the complexity of the companion app, from what I've seen, it's pretty straightforward in the listings. I just don't really get the intent. So wrapping up the discussion on the combat records itself, 5 months and 23 days later, combat records are here, or perhaps if you're in the same scenario that I am, where your app hasn't updated just yet, they're coming very soon here for you. But the stats you probably wanted to see since launch aren't as accessible as you previously may have thought. Like I said, personally, I'm not necessarily invested in it. I'm not necessarily too crushed by this because it wasn't a make or break thing for me. Leaderboards, I checked them maybe once or twice in Black Ops 4, but I totally understand where many other players are invested in this kind of stuff. I'm just more so confused as to why it was introduced in the format and way that it was. Like, why did it even happen like this? But anyways, as for the other things coming out of today's little hotfix in Black Ops 4, this was a little bit outside of, obviously, but the one big thing also coming out of this was Bare Bones healing update. Previously, Bare Bones took 7.3 seconds to have the ability to heal again, which could be life or death in a lot of scenarios, and that's actually way longer than it previously was in automatic healing previous titles. The base developmental function for automatic health regeneration in previous CODs was relatively about 5 seconds in terms of that's when it would start to regen. Depending on the game you're looking at, if you pass a certain threshold of damage, like you were down, say, below 50 HP left, then the health regeneration would kick in at 5 seconds of you not taking any more damage, and then it would end up progressively healing you back up to eventually what would be 100. Some Call of Duty titles ended up having systems in place where if you took minimal damage, it would instantaneously bring you back up to full HP. But again, after that 5 seconds. So even if you ended up having the progressive regeneration, 7.3 seconds was about the time that it would take to get from 1 HP to 100 HP, instead of in Black Ops 4, you only gaining the ability to regen after that time. Which again, that really depended on how much damage you took, but now it's been dropped down to 5 seconds, so it's more so in line with previous titles and the base regeneration of an automatic health regeneration of previous titles. So I'm definitely all for this. I know the biggest thing whenever I was playing Bare Bones was the deterrent of not being able to heal all that much. Definitely called for much more slower gameplay compared to especially just regular Black Ops 4, but even compared to previous titles, you played a little slower so you didn't die and also get picked off while still waiting to end up regenerating your health after having just done it. There are some things for Ancient Evil and Zombies in terms of stability fixes added in with this hotfix, and then the other things that I kind of want to bring to your attention, because these actually may have been things you noticed yourself because they were more widespread than a rare bug or something that would occur, is that there were a couple of things in Blackout that were fixed. Firstly, there was an issue addressed that caused the total number of players alive to be tabulated and displayed incorrectly. There was a bug in which if there were people spectating the team you were ending up playing, you maybe had a scenario where there was one person other than your team left in the final circle on Alcatraz, whereas the number of players alive would showcase, say, 8 players, because there were spectators on top of that player that's alive. That caused for much confusion, and many times over especially the past couple of days whenever I was grinding out Alcatraz, where I was like, wait a second, were actually done already. So that's something you may have noticed. And again, another thing in terms of the Alcatraz and redeploy message with this, it would actually end up showcasing a message that would say that you could redeploy in 5 seconds or whatever, but going into that final circle, you wouldn't be able to. So it would showcase the message, get your hopes up, and then it'd be like, nah, just kidding. And so therefore, that was fixed out as of this hotfix today as well. But that's really all that changed with today's little slight mini update with Black Ops 4. But also, I just wanted to talk combat records with you guys because I really don't understand why this happened as it did. Love to get your thoughts and feedback, though, down there in the comment section down below. Do you guys care about combat records? Do you care that it was moved over to the companion app? Would you have liked to see it in-game? Whatever it may be, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. We'll have a little discussion with that down there, but hopefully enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 4, MP, Blackout, Zombies. We got you covered with the best of updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. So if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Probably live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. Well, that's it out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.